We're back after some brief technical difficulties. A maiden voyage wouldn't be a maiden voyage without a bit of a rocky start, but we press right on.
Whitewater Rapids, that ain't no big deal.
Oh yeah, love a little turbulence, love a little surf. So next up on the docket, 12-year NFL veteran wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders has officially announced his retirement via Instagram. Appeared in 3 Super Bowls, winner of Super Bowl 50, 2-time Pro Bowler, very memorable stints with the Steelers, Broncos, New Orleans Saints, and the Buffalo Bills most recently. Jackson, what are your thoughts on Sanders? I mean, I still distinctly remember him in the early, especially that rookie season breaking out with, playing alongside Hines Ward and like a pretty veteran core trying to establish himself early in there. Days in Bronco. Any immediate Emmanuel Sanders memories jump out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all are going to end up remembering him for his time in Denver. And as, New England Patriots enthusiasts, we should get that out of the way. Both of us are Patriots fans. Sorry in advance. 2014, 2015, Emmanuel Sanders was, up there in terms of just, smaller receivers who could get downfield, really shake some guys in coverage. And, he won a Super Bowl and he tormented the Pats along the way. And I'm sure a lot of people who aren't Broncos fans still remember him fondly for that. So great career. Just a guy, he had I think it was, a Super Bowl ring where he led the game in receptions and yards and was the best receiver on that team consistently all year. That's a guy that everyone in that fan base is going to remember forever because he had a year where he, you don't say he won them a Super Bowl, but without him, they probably don't win a Super Bowl. And those are the guys that get remembered fondly by a fan base.
Yeah, exactly. That 2-year run. I mean, I feel like I remember him pretty distinctly as a Steeler, but that 2-year run in Denver, 14 and 15, especially 14, first year coming off free agency, signed to Denver, comes out of the gate, career high 101 receptions, career high 9 receiving touchdowns, finished the best of his career in DYAR and DVOA, finished 3rd among receivers with a 481 receiving DYAR, 4th among receivers in DVOA with 29.6. I mean, in terms of just the small-bodied, scrappy slot receivers, Sanders is one of the best. He just had I think that's what also just like that high was just what led him to those extra deals with, the Saints and Buffalo. If Buffalo was able to squeeze just a little bit of that high, a little bit of that juice 5-6 years removed, maybe they'd be in better shape. Maybe 13 seconds wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah. Oh boy. And the other thing I wanted to say was, when you think about his time in Denver, it's pretty, inextricably tied to Demaryius Thomas, who we obviously miss as a football community, but it's kind of special when you can think of 2 guys as a wide receiver tandem that led your team to a Super Bowl. And those 2 guys complemented each other so well. It's what you love to see as a football fan when your team has, 2 receivers with different skill sets that can really play off each other. But the other thing about Sanders, he was a scrappy slot guy. He could really get downfield. There aren't a lot of slot guys who can do that. So he was kind of a special talent and something that we don't really have a lot of in this league right now. We have great slot guys. We have guys that can burn you deep. Sanders is a pretty good hybrid of those 2 skill sets.
Yeah. I think, honestly, he gave a quote. It's really been interesting. I suppose it's because he won the Super Bowl there, but it's been really interesting just to see how much Denver's embraced him. The first images in his, or the most prominent images in his Instagram highlight send-off, the retirement announcement, are very Broncos-centric. A lot of the, initial releases on his retirement came from the Broncos. But this quote he gave to DenverBroncos.com really, really shows like it's a warm and fuzzy retirement just based off the quote alone. For me, I feel like it's the right time for me 12 years. I'm walking away from the game healthy. I've had a great career, played in a lot of games, 3 Super Bowls, Pro Bowls. I've played for some great organizations. And so I just feel like it's my time. 12 years is good for me. Now I can go run routes with my son, play basketball with my son, hang out with my kids, and enjoy my life. It's a nice little send-off there. You're not quite walking out on your own terms, but you can walk out, as you can. Now it's family time. You've set up generational wealth for yourself. You've taken on a Super Bowl ring in the process, and now you can hang with your kids. It's great.
Yeah, not everyone's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I think if you go into the league, with the sole goal of becoming a Hall of Famer, that might be a good mentality to have, but most guys are going to be disappointed if that's the mentality they go in with. If you go in with the mentality of, I want to play a decade, I want to win a ring, and, I want to be, cherished by a fan base or maybe 2 fan bases, then I think he accomplished pretty much everything you realistically could expect, as a young player coming into that league. So great job, Emmanuel Sanders. Awesome career. And hope you enjoy retirement. Seems like you're setting yourself up for some fun there.
Absolutely. Now we're staying on the West Coast. We're flipping conferences. Dipping a little bit back in the well to last week. We just want to make sure we're touching on it. The Jimmy Garoppolo contract. Now, Garoppolo in San Francisco agreed to a 1-year restructure of his current deal. If it had gone past the roster cut down to 53, the San Francisco 49ers would have owed Garoppolo, I believe, $26 million in guaranteed money. The new 1-year restructure gives him a $6.5 million base salary, about $500,000 in per game roster bonuses. Performance incentives allow him to earn up to $16 million total on the deal. And on top of it, just to throw Garoppolo a bone, Garoppolo gets both a no tag and a no trade clause in the deal. Now, Garoppolo noted that didn't want to ruffle any feathers by asking for a release. According to him, he had said that I don't know, things just kept falling into place. I'm one of those people that I don't really want to ruffle the feathers too much here and there. I kind of just want to go with the flow. And that's kind of where training camp is going. I'm happy with it. Like I said, things worked out. I'm happy now. Defined role as a backup. Everyone, Trey Lance has refuted reports that had allegedly come out that he was a little bit frustrated with the process of bringing Garoppolo back. Shanahan apparently didn't even realize that bringing Garoppolo back as a backup was even an option for him, according to John Lynch. Where do you think he stands right now in the 49ers locker room? Is this just a best case scenario for everyone? Does it raise a couple red flags about Trey Lance? Where do you sort of stand on it, Jackson?
I don't think it's a problem as long as Trey Lance is clearly defined as the starter. I think that the quarterback market worked out very strangely this year. I think it was all thrown off a little bit by sort of the subpar QB draft class and teams that would have typically been in the market for not only rookie quarterbacks, but also, potentially veteran retreads like a Garoppolo, were a little bit scared of doing such things and more so opted for 1-year stopgap options in the vein of Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, etc. And I think that for San Francisco, as long as you clearly define Lance is our starter, we're riding with Lance moving forward, he's had his year to mature on the bench, then I don't see the problem with, keeping Jimmy Garoppolo in the fold. He almost took you to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, 1 bad quarter away from it. And I think you could do a lot worse for an NFL, kind of mentor / backup than a Jimmy Garoppolo, who is creeping up on 30 now, if I'm not mistaken, 31, 32. So, he's been around a while. We always think of him as a young guy, the successor to Tom Brady, but, he's seen a lot of the league, and, on a personal note, I hope he gets another shot somewhere. Maybe not a team that's expecting to contend like San Francisco is, but he's a top 32 quarterback in the league, and he deserves another chance at some point to take over a starting role.
Yeah, I mean, first off, this is his age 31 season, so
you're good.
It's on the not quite. I'm not ready to call it on the wrong side, but he is getting up there in age, and also last year, given what he's, kind of gotten from, media and outside voices and just general assessment of the quarterback position, Jimmy Garoppolo finished 2021 10th in DYAR with 854, 5th in DVOA, 17.9%, and helped the Niners get to the NFC Championship in some capacity. It's, it's still, the introduction of the wide back. Things are getting a little bit easier. Like, you got to recognize the role he's in, but I don't see how this is too bad a thing, except for the confidence vote in Trey Lance. It took a while for San Francisco to kind of really get a unified voice around Trey Lance is our guy. Trey Lance is really good. It's not a lot of the, rumblings of, beat reporters talking about Pat Mahomes while Alex Smith is still the quarterback saying, like, this is the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. This is a guy in hiding. There's been highs and lows. We've seen stuff in preseason. We've seen, small bouts in the actual NFL. I get a little worried that, just having him on the roster, granted, the situation works out great both sides. It gives Jimmy Garoppolo more autonomy in where he ends up going down the road. He's got a little bit more say in how he handles his, exit from San Francisco. The 49ers are now in a position to get compensation for him on a reasonable deal. It's a way more desirable deal for other teams to take on versus the $26 million fully guaranteed contract that he originally had. But I just get worried about, if things don't work out well with Lance, like, will there be rumblings? Will there be, additional stuff that'll, throw a little wrench into things?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, they were right about Pat Mahomes, right? And it's pretty unlikely, even, the best case scenario for Trey Lance. It's hard to be Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes is pretty generational talent at the quarterback position. So I don't necessarily think, Matt Mayoko not tweeting out how incredible Trey Lance is going to be doesn't mean he's going to be a good starter in this league. I think that his athleticism opens up a lot in this potential 49ers offense, an offense that already was, a 10-point blown fourth quarter lead away from going to a Super Bowl last year. But I get what you're saying. And I definitely think that having the guy who was kind of in front of you for the job still in the building can be a little bit strange. But, this is, you're getting paid millions of dollars to play quarterback in the NFL. Not everything is going to be a perfect scenario all the time. You are the starter. Go out there and win some games. The 49ers have a great football team built around him. When he's out there on the field, Jimmy G's not going to be looking over his shoulder. Go play.
Yeah, I think the leadership there is key too. It's, if the 49ers are going to have success, they're going to have to lean on Trey Lance. I just get worried that, keeping the specter of the past in the room, even if it works out best for the two parties involved, Garoppolo and the team, look at the rest of that 2021 class. It's something as big as, the Patriots cutting Cam Newton to ensure that Mac Jones is the bona fide leader of this team once he was named starter. It's something as small as, whether it's the Jets trading Sam Darnold in advance of the 2021 drafts, picking up Wilson, or the Jaguars getting rid of Gardner Minshew, even though Urban Meyer decided to run Lawrence on second team. Once he had the job, got rid of Minshew as the backup. It's setting up like a bona fide structure of leadership and, fully passing the torch to that young guy. I just worry that, having the other guy in the building is tough.
Yeah, none of those guys had earned in their building. I recognize what Cam Newton did in Carolina, but in the situations they were in, none of those guys that you just mentioned who got moved or released, traded away, had earned the kind of respect that I think Garoppolo's earned within the San Francisco organization.
I mean, Newton was a captain in the Patriots locker room, so it was there was a leadership thing there, but I digress.
Yeah, but he was there for 1 year and they went 7-9. And injury concerns, etc. Whereas Jimmy Garoppolo took you to a Super Bowl. I don't think you just unceremoniously dump him on the street unless that's what he asks. And he said he considered it, and that's not what he wanted. I thought that was just really well said by him in all ways. The quote that you read a few minutes ago, that was, that's veteran leadership. That's a guy who understands he's not the big man in the room anymore. He's, wants to be treated right, and he feels the team's doing that, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's veteran savvy. We'll see if he gets another job. I think he definitely deserves another shot.
Yeah,
but
it worked out so odd this year. It got to the end of the offseason, and it was either Carolina or Seattle were the two potential options. You figured San Francisco would never trade him in division. So once Baker Mayfield gets announced to Carolina, that's pretty much it. All of a sudden, Jimmy G's on the outs without a job. But there are starters in this league who I think are pretty clearly beneath his talent level when he's at full strength, including the Steelers, who we just talked about. And, they just went a different direction, went younger, wanted to rebuild their quarterback room. But Jimmy G deserves another shot somewhere.
Exactly. All right, now we're going into a bit of an injury roundup, a little rapid fire, trying to just touch on the biggest injury stories of the last week. First up, Robert Saleh officially announces Zach Wilson out Sunday. And according to him, sounds like he's out for at least the next 3 weeks. Wilson underwent successful knee surgery on August 16th. It was a partial meniscus tear with a bit of a bone bruise on a non-contact injury. Saleh said there's no reason to rush him back. Quote, we are going to make sure both mind and body are 110% and make sure we do right by him. And we feel like talking to the doctors and everyone, it's going to be that Pittsburgh week. That Pittsburgh week is coming up around week 4, which means Joe Flacco, at least for now, Joe Flacco's confirmed starter for week 1 against his former Baltimore Ravens. Then he's going to Cleveland to play the Browns, and then the Jets host Cincinnati week 3 before the Jets go on the road and Zach Wilson potentially makes a start week 4 for the Steelers. Jackson, how confident are you in Joe Flacco getting the job done, holding down the fort against – I also didn't realize they're just playing the whole AFC North up front.
Yeah. Not very, Cale. Not very confident in Mr. Flacco. I will say the social media clip this week of Joe Flacco recounting his children telling him he sucks at football was one of the funnier things I've seen in recent memory. Man, it's a interesting league, right? We talk about guys like Jimmy Garoppolo not finding a starting job anywhere, and by week 2 of the season, we get us a Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett matchup. It was a weird offseason. It was a really unprecedented in many ways offseason, and we haven't even talked about the Deshaun Watson situation and what that did to the quarterback market. But clearly, things worked out in a stranger way than we're used to. That being said, Jacoby Brissett's beatable. I don't think you're beating Lamar Jackson up front, so that feels like 0-1 to start the season right there. But I don't think you were beating him with Wilson anyway. We have a YouTube comment saying Joe Flacco is probably a slight upgrade over Wilson. I don't think so, guys. I think Joe Flacco, it's been a long time since he was an effective starter in the league. He was one of the worst in Denver, and that was 3-4 years ago. So I don't have a whole lot of confidence. But he brings up a good point. On the other hand, Zach Wilson was pretty much the worst quarterback in the league last year if you go by guys who had a minimum 200 attempts. He was 34th in DVOA, 34th in DYAR out of 34. So,
Jackson, I'm going to need you to cool your brakes on Cool Joe here.
I'm not cooling them. I don't like it.
I don't know. Listen, I get it. I completely understand. There's a lot. He's 37. He's also he was the I believe he's now the second quarterback ever, according to Jamison Henley over at ESPN, the second quarterback in league history to play a season opener against the team he won a Super Bowl with. Just a little nugget there. But had some time at Jets camp this past summer. Got to look at, got to just check out the general scope of stuff with USA Today, and he doesn't look that bad for 37. Like, it's not quite, it's not quite prime with the Ravens, but I think he can manage. I think the creativity of the LaFleur offense with the weapons that he has, it's enough to at least hold down the fort. I think they've at least got a shot to pick up one win.
Mm. The only thing I'll say is we talked about
maybe beat that Browns team.
They maybe can beat that Browns team. I agree with that, but it's just funny to me. I mean, we talked about how bad Zach Wilson was last year. Joe Flacco was that bad in 2019. If you go back and look at the 2019 numbers, his DVOA was negative 18%. His DYAR was 29th in the league, and that was 3 years ago. So he's had a lot of time to sort of, not to say it in this mean a way, but he's kind of been rotting on the bench, right? So I'm a little bit concerned about bringing 37-year-old back out there and seeing what he's still got left.
If you call it atonement, it's going off Joey sucks. Wilson was at least, it's down there as one of the worst rookie seasons. I think it's bottom 20 since the DVOA metrics have started. It's a rough season for Wilson his rookie season. Do I still think he can bounce back? Yeah, I think the upside's there. But, I'm not even going to call it high ceiling or high floor. Like, I think it's serviceable. We're spending too much time talking Flacco Jackson. He can't get sucked in.
The only other thing I'll say is it was a historically bad situation that Wilson was put in last year, just in terms of how bad the O-line was. They allowed the fourth most sacks last year. How bad his luck was with having Elijah Moore get hurt in the middle of the season. Played his last 2 games
out too.
Yeah, it was tough. And they really tried to do a lot this offseason to build an offense that would be more suitable to, support him. And I was excited to see how he would do right from the start, having a full offseason to build with them. And that's why I think this was just a very poorly timed, unfortunate injury. And that's kind of what happens in this league sometimes. Hope for the kid's sake that he can bounce back week 4. Cale's been so in tune with the Jets beat that I want the Jets to, be competent this year, just so we can both. It's weird for Patriots fans to think that about the Jets, but we're both pretty tapped in on them because of how much work you've done with them. So I'm kind of rooting for them.
Rooting's a stretch. I just want to see success. But I will say, speaking of ill-timed injuries, JC Jackson, not expected to play week 1 versus the Raiders. Jackson underwent surgery on August 23rd for it's to treat discomfort with something Jackson was born with. There's not a ton of detail, but Staley definitely just stressed it was a comfort issue for when Jackson would decelerate. It's basically just about peace of mind. It's cleaning something up and getting it done. He's tried rehab, he's tried injections, but just getting it a little non-invasive cleanup with some recovery time seemed like the best solution long-term. That being said, does not spell success out for week 1. Last year, they're playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who, by the way, picked up Davante Adams over the offseason, arguably the wide receiver 1. The Chargers weren't great against wide receiver 1s last year. Chargers pass defense ranked 31st against wide receiver 1s, putting up a positive 22.9% DVOA against them in 2021. Jackson not only led the league in pass breakups, finished second in interceptions in 2021, he was the cornerback 1 that helped the New England Patriots secondary to a negative 33.3% pass defense DVOA against top wide receivers. So if there's a guy you wouldn't want to miss week 1 to cover Davante Adams, it's JC Jackson. Jackson, there's a lot of Jacksons in here. How do you think this fares going forward? Do you have, it's a competitive AFC West. Do you think this puts them up to a rough start?
If I'm the Chargers, I don't want to lose that game. I'll say that. But it is week 1 of a 17-week season. We've seen some week 1 matchups that worked out a certain way and then went on to dictate absolutely nothing about the season and how it would go. But it's a big loss. And I'm more worried as long as he's okay long-term. If it's just missing week 1 and he's right back out there, then I'm not concerned. But something makes me a little bit uneasy about it, that it's not just, he twisted his ankle in practice. It's a one-time thing. If this lingers, if this is ever something that comes back, they gave him 5 years. And, it's cap in the NFL is one of the most confusing things because you can always just push cap down the road if you're the New Orleans Saints. But at some point you feel like it comes back to haunt you. I'm not trying to say JC Jackson's going to be a dead cap hit. He's one of the best corners in the league when he's right, but something is just making me feel a little bit uneasy about, and we just saw a YouTube comment about it. No way a Chargers DB injury will linger throughout the season. This team is cursed, Cale. Everything looks like it's going right for them, and it's not. So it worries me from a symbolic standpoint more than it actually worries me from, what I think it's going to be week 1 against the Raiders.
The perennial media darling, Los Angeles Chargers. What have they done? What have they done to deserve just their horrible stretch of luck? I don't know. We'll see how it fares. But as of now, that's a tough loss to suffer, especially considering how the Chargers went out last year, just missing the playoffs to that Raiders team. It would have been a fun matchup to see, but now we'll have to wait a few weeks to see it in Las Vegas. Doug Peterson
matchup though. That's still a game we have circled on our calendar for week 1. That's going to be a barn burner. Absolutely.
Doug Peterson has announced for the Jaguars that James Robinson's going to play Sunday. It's going to be a little abbreviated. He's not expected to get a full workload in week 1, especially with Travis Etienne back in the fold. But this is it's an Achilles injury from week 16. That's a 9-month turnaround, 8-month turnaround on an Achilles injury. Impressive stuff there. First off, just had to say that. Jaguars offensive coordinator Press Taylor said last week, we've seen get a feel for that as we get into the live bullets, if you will, of where Travis Etienne, is at from there. I get you don't know anything until you really see it, so we'll kind of go there as we get there. James Robinson's a proven commodity in this league, so we're excited about those two guys and everyone in the room as well. So this clearly isn't just Etienne's job for the taking. It seems like it'll be a bit of a two-back system. What's your optimism on not only the Jaguars offense and the upgrades there in general, but an 8-month turnaround from an Achilles tear?
Well, I mean, I don't think I could do that. I feel like I have an 8-month turnaround every time I do leg day. So props to James Robinson on that one. But just looking at the full scope of things, it's great to have 2 really good running backs in that room. And I think James Robinson has proven that he is a really good running back. We ran through some of the numbers. People were discouraged by his step back in volume last year. His efficiency numbers actually went up last year. His 2020 rookie year where he broke the 1,000-yard mark, he was 22nd in DYAR, 26th in DVOA. Last year, he was actually 7th in DYAR, 6th in DVOA. So when he's out there, when he's right, he's a really good back. And I think Travis Etienne has the potential to be a really good back as well. Urban Meyer sure seemed to think so. That's why he drafted him in the first round. But again, having one great running back can only impact an offense so much. Having 2 of them, I don't think is that much more of a marginal improvement. So for me, the Jaguars are going to come down to how much better Trevor Lawrence can be in year 2, how good those upgrades can gel at wide receiver, how much Christian Kirk can actually step up into the role of a wide receiver 1, and whether or not the offensive line can even give Lawrence time to throw to those guys. So great to have 2 good talents at the running back position, but it's sort of one of those things where I think it's sort of a smaller plot on that offense as opposed to, the whole being still a big question mark.
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly see. It's almost hard to rationalize that, after the breakout season he had his rookie year as a UDFA, on top of Meyer really not fully committing to him, doing a lot of Carlos Dunlap, the running back that they had, Carlos Hyde, mixing a lot of Carlos Hyde in there. It's shocking.
Ohio State, stunning.
I guess it's the Ohio State runoff, but it was very surprising to see as much just that Robinson was a top 10 back last year. In retrospect, this could be a decently threatening run game if the offensive line pans out. And once again, speaking of offensive line, perfect transitions here on the FO News Show.
You kill it, man.
Trevor Penning, out until at least November, went down getting foot surgery. Not expected to completely miss his rookie season. Optimistic right now, according to Ian Rappaport, gives Penning a chance to return to football by early November, at least for practice. Now, Saints are considered a decent wild card spot. However, with the amount of turnover at the offensive line, Teron Armstead goes out. Trevor Penning was expected to be the guy to step up there. With him out, what's your sort of assessment of how the Saints go from here? Does this feel like as big a loss to you as I kind of feel it is?
No, absolutely. This is one of I think that, an offensive lineman going down maybe doesn't get as much play on Twitter, wherever you get your football news, as, a quarterback injury. But this feels like a huge one to me because the Saints, A, have a chance to be a playoff team, but also missed them last year. B, have one of the weirdest offenses in the league, one of the offenses that I feel like we know the least about. Just running through some of the things last year about their offense that stunned me. They were the number 1 team in pass DVOA in the red zone last year. Where does that come from? Jameis Winston only played half the year. You brought in, some mishmash of, 2 very, very low-level backup quarterbacks, a Taysom Hill, who I don't even think is a quarterback, and then you just, throw Trevor Siemian out there for whatever reason. And somehow that's the number 1 pass DVOA red zone team with all the Mahomeses and Allens and Bradys of the league. But at the same time, this is the team that has one of the heftiest run percentages on second and long, and they were terrible at it. They were 29th in the league at second and long. So I really don't know what to make of this offense, and I wanted to see a full season of their rookie tackle because this is a team that has so much money on the books in the future that this was a guy you were thinking you could count on at a relatively low cost, and he's not going to be there for a while. That's what makes me nervous. Is I want to see this Saints offense whole, and I want to see them gel together as the season goes on because they have so many new pieces, and one of those pieces is just not there.
Yeah, it's I mean, think of the turnover right now at this offensive line. You lose Teron Armstead. You expect Trevor Penning to step up. Now Trevor Penning's on IR, along with Forrest Lamp and Ethan Greenidge. So it's 3 long-term injuries at the offensive line spot. James Hurst is expected to fill in at left tackle. But now you're placing a lot of faith in a Cesar Ruiz. There's parts of this line that are pretty, I got questions here. And especially, you have Kamara coming off a bad season last year. One of his worst at the running back position. He's not great in a big, as a big workhorse back. He's best used, efficiently with a passing, with a receiving mix. I just worry that a lot of this could spell disaster early for New Orleans, and a lot of the, optimism that we've kind of had riding on New Orleans could get sullied pretty quick by some, pretty major offensive line turnover.
It's a weird team, Cal. It's one of the biggest question marks. Reports come out today that Chris Olave is wide receiver 5 on the depth chart in New Orleans. I don't know what to make of them.
I mean, we'll see. Yeah, I know rookie receivers have to earn their keep, but wide receiver 5 is
troubling.
Okay. All right, last on the injury docket, just before we get into Thursday night news previews, I got to touch quickly on the Harold Landry ACL tear. Happened last week. Tore his ACL in practice on Wednesday, September 1st. Major piece of that Tennessee Titans defense last year. 12 total sacks for the Titans last year. Part of a big 5-year contract with the Titans. In the most recent FO projections for the season, Titans are now clocking in at 21st in defensive DVOA. Jackson, how big of a loss is Landry to this Titans defense and a team with a lot of shakeup over the offseason?
So I think both these things can be true. I think Harold Landry can be a huge loss, but I also think that this can still be a good defense. And I also think that losing someone at this point, granted it is close to the start of the season, but I would rather lose someone close to the start of the season in the preseason than I would week 1 or 2. It's like before you hit the field, before you start playing games that count, you want to know what you have. And, Landry was really, really good last year. One thing that I found when I was researching him that I was stunned by was there were only 3 players in the league last year that had 75 plus tackles and 10 plus sacks. It was Aaron Donald, Micah Parsons, Harold Landry. That's pretty good company to be keeping. He was really, really good. But this Titans defense still returns 2 All-Pros in Byard and Jeffrey Simmons. They're bringing back, a full season of healthy Bud Dupree. And they have, Rashad Weaver, 4th-round pick in 2021, getting a huge opportunity now to step in and fill the role that's being vacated now by Harold Landry, who, was hurt in week 3 last year and didn't get to play much. So the pieces are still there. It's a big loss, but I'm also glad it happened now.
Yeah, you're really calling on Bud Dupree to step up. Danico Autry probably slides in right to the spot that Landry vacates. But honestly, I think the biggest thing that the Titans lose is just that front versatility that they get in their front 7 by having a Landry there. Landry lines up all the way wide outside in edge position. Landry can line up inside. Landry can line up, standing up from off ball. The amount of different fronts that Landry allows this Titans defense to create, it's just an extra level of flexibility that you're not going to get out of a lot of players. It feels, it's not a total derailment, but it feels pretty tough for a Titans team that kind of needs all the help they can get at this point.
I hear you. I also think if there's anyone I kind of trust to right the ship here, it's a Mike Vrabel. And, say what you want about the Titans last year and how they were statistically probably the weakest 1 seed we've ever had. They've kind of proven themselves to be an adaptable regular season team who can adjust and still find a way to win games. The Titans rostered 91 players last year. That's, a team record. That's insane. And they found a way to win 12 games. They might have, kind of black magic their way to those 12 wins, but who's to say they can't do something like it again? And, Cale's least favorite guy, Derrick Henry, is starting off the season healthy and ready to do some damage.
Yeah. If anyone's going to deal with, with injuries, it's Tennessee. Now let's get into the little news roundup we've got for tomorrow night's matchup. Biggest breaking stories or biggest trending stories out of Buffalo and LA camps headed into the Thursday night matchup, the season opener, Bills and Rams. First off for the Bills.
Let's go.
Oh, it feels good to say we have football back.
24 hours, baby. Let's go.
First up, Bills agree to a 4-year, $53 million extension with tight end Dawson Knox. Knox comes in just under top 5 in terms of both guaranteed money and average money per year on a deal among tight ends. He's coming off the best season of his career in terms of both cracking top 10, both DVOA and DYAR for the first time in his career. What kind of asset do you think that brings to Buffalo?
I think it's good. I think they have all the weapons they could need. I'm less concerned about what a Dawson Knox brings to this offense than I am about the potential explosion of a Gabe Davis, who we're both really high on as wide receiver 2, a big step up in this offense for him, and a big step up for McKenzie slotting in behind him at wide receiver 3. But I think it's good to have stability in your tight end room. I think the one thing we would say about Dawson Knox, if there's anything we're concerned about, is his catch rate not super high, 28th in the league last year. But, these are pretty slim margins. One drop can make kind of a big difference in those statistics. So I think he's a good, bordering on but not quite great tight end. And I think that he's elevated by Josh Allen, as most who play for him are. And I think it's good to have consistency when you're trying to win a championship, having those same guys come in and year out. So I think they, in a way, sort of did what had to be done to keep him around, and he's a guy worth keeping around.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the over-the-cap numbers that are ahead of where Dawson sort of proverbially slides in because they don't have it officially updated, he's right on that cusp. It's similar money to what Dallas Goedert got with the Eagles. He lines up more similar to like a David Njoku. In terms of total guaranteed money, he falls just in between Johnny Smith and David Njoku. So kind of feels ballpark. It's that second tier tight ends right below, the Kelsey, Kittle, Andrew. Even Kittle's guaranteed money, or Kelsey's guaranteed money isn't a lot. But his, very strong total value is what's carrying that Kelsey deal. But, hats off to him. A little bit more injury roundup for the Bills. Trey White officially put on the injured reserve / pup list. Tore his ACL on Thanksgiving last year. Still not quite recovered. Hasn't practiced all summer, but the timetable is optimistic. Who we do have for week 1 is Jordan Poyer, set to play in week 1. I've been dealing with a bit of an elbow injury. Was wearing the red non-contact injury during training camp, or the red non-contact jersey during training camp. But according to depth chart reports, it seems like Poyer is going to be there week 1. How do you think Buffalo's going to just, having Poyer is a big help. How do you think Buffalo's going to deal with the absence of Trey White to start the season, especially against LA?
Yeah, Trey White's really good, Kel. I don't know if you know this. It's hard to be missing a guy. It's hard to be missing a guy who's probably top 2 or 3 at his position in the entire league. He's an outstanding cornerback, but at the same time, I feel like it almost goes undersold how insane it is that both of the Bills' safeties are all pro. That it's not the most important position on the field, but it cannot hurt to have 2 guys at the same relative position who are among the best 5-6 guys in the league. And I think it's big for them to have him back week 1 because this is obviously a challenging matchup against a Rams team that the offense has a lot of question marks, which we're about to get into. So I think it's there's no way Trey White was going to be ready after an ACL tear in November. It's better to be cautious and trust the rest of your incredible loaded team to get you a couple wins early in the season. Make sure he comes back healthy because ultimately, what this Bills team is building towards is the playoffs. And, you'd love to have the 1 seed and win every game you can, but you also want to get there whole and you don't want to rush guys back too early before they're 100%.
I mean, if there's any team that knows the importance of the 1 seed, it's Buffalo from last year. That being said, big shoes to fill for the remaining 2 cornerbacks, rookie Kyer Elam and Dane Jackson, reportedly going to get the starting slots there at the 2 cornerback positions. That'll remain to be seen how they fare, but they'll have their hands full. Kicking it over to LA. First story up, McVay says there won't be any limitation for Stafford in games and said there's no hesitation on Stafford throwing 50 to 55 times in the opener. This comes after a lot of speculation about some lingering pain that Stafford's felt in his elbow. As early as last season, it's kind of trickled in all summer. I don't know about you, Jackson. I'm personally, it's kind of those things. It's one of those things where it's like, if you didn't have to say it, you didn't say it. I'm worried about what I've heard about Stafford's elbow, or what I've read about Stafford's elbow. All this very nebulous kind of like said in hushed tones kind of talk about Stafford's elbow scared me a little bit.
You're right, and it's hard to overstate what a difference that a healthy Matt Stafford actually makes on this team. That trade was criticized in a sense, but also it was necessary, and it was proven to be necessary by the fact that he jumped them from 19th to 7th in past DVOA, and oh, by the way, won them a Super Bowl. So yeah, I'm worried, but I also feel like if they're saying there's no limitations, then I guess I'm just going to trust it until I see the limitations for myself, because hush whispers are one thing. If Matt Stafford goes out there and, throws 35 for 50 with 3 touchdowns and beats the, preseason Super Bowl champion Buffalo Bills, then I'm not going to have too much to say about it. So I share your concern, but I also feel like, you don't want to hear that he's not going to be able to throw 50 to 55 times. So in that sense, I'm glad he's saying it.
Yeah, I don't think he's outright lying to us. It's just the fact that it keeps coming up scares me. But going back to the guys he's throwing to, Van Jefferson is the only player to appear on the Rams injury report headed into this week. It's good that they only have 1 injury, but there's some concern about whether or not Jefferson will be able to play in the open. Jefferson underwent minor surgery on August 2nd following an earlier surgery on the same knee this past offseason. And according to the Rams, he may not play in the opener, and it would be replaced, quote unquote, by committee. Jackson, we know that Rams obviously have Cooper Kupp, coming off one of the most historic DYAR seasons in Football Outsiders history, also joined by Allen Robinson. How do you think they sort of fill the gap here?
Well, is it for one game or is it for longer? I think that Van Jefferson is a guy that you can very easily replace the production of for a short amount of time. But he's also, I don't want to say essential, but he's an important piece of that wide receiver room who, ultimately you're going to either need to have or you're going to need to replace. Van Jefferson, just to kind of give people context of, the kind of guy he is, he's a home run threat. He is prone to a lot of drops. He was 79th in catch rate last year, not very good. And, he's a wide receiver, 3, maybe bordering on 2, who can do some nice things, can stretch the field, he's 47th in YAR. That's his best metric. So, he's getting you some yards. He's an important producer who you're going to have to replace if he's not there. But you bring in Allen Robinson, you have, tight end options for one game. I don't think you have a problem making up his production.
Yeah, I think the biggest element you're missing is just Jefferson's ability to stretch the field. He really took over that.
I don't think I'm missing it, but yeah.
I mean, in terms of what you're missing by not having Jefferson in the fold, can that be, in short term replaced by, some additional touches to Tyler Higbee, some, additional integration of like a Tutu Atwell? Sure. But, you're going to miss Van Jefferson long term. Speaking of Van Jefferson replacements, Rams might have one in their future because there has been reports that the Rams are currently just keeping a locker for Odell Beckham Jr. amid his free agency. Now, Odell jokingly tweeted that according to, with some interactions from our own Vince Verhey, Football Outsiders, basically the winner of Thursday night's game decides where he's going.
Hey, shout out Vince, man. That's how you get, the name out there. FO and Odell just going back and forth on Twitter.
Yeah, those are the interactions we need. It's winner take all. It's you're bringing home the bride if you win the game. But Rams are doing their best job to court him, keeping a locker and nameplate set up for Odell in the practice facility in the event Beckham decides to return. I was just watching. I don't know. I was just watching Super Bowl 53 was on the other day, or the most recent Super Bowl. Is it 53? I don't know. Time's weird. But you forget how big an impact he had in that game. Before he, slips on the turf, goes down with a non-contact ACL tear, second in 2-3 years, which, we'll see if he comes back in same form. But, man, he had such an impact on this Rams team. If he does end up returning to LA, concerns about Stafford's elbow or not, I am extremely high on this Rams offense if they can get him back in the fold.
Yeah, let's also not forget, this is a guy that caught 5 touchdowns in 6 games towards the end of last year. When this is why it stinks that he got hurt, was because he was sort of starting to find that form again. He wasn't ever going to be the multiple, double-digit catch games sort of, game breaker Odell, but he was a very productive wide receiver too, and somebody that you definitely want around. So I hope he gets back, and I hope the right team gets him. But can you imagine, Cale, being told that a football game decides the outcome of whether you move to Los Angeles or Buffalo? Like, in what other arena of life would that make any sense? So you're a special man like Odell Beckham. You put yourself in a very special situation.
That's high stakes gambling if I've ever heard it. Well, we'll know where Odell is moving the second this game kicks off. Thank you very much for joining us on our first ever edition of the FO News Show. We'll see you back next week, same time, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, with a full slate of games to talk about, which, God, I can't keep saying it enough because it just gets me excited.
Unbelievable. Let's go. I mean, here we are. This is, we're going to talk about the news in football every single week. And starting next week, we're going to have results to talk about in the game of football. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. We have a pretty awesome job, Cale.
We're back, boys. Let's go. Awesome. For Jackson, I'm Cale. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your day.